Tiger Isle, The Government of Thieves, written by E.S. Shankar.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of Tiger Isle, The Government of Thieves. First, let me brief you on who the special guests are today. Unfortunately, the main guest, Yang Berhormat Rafizi Ramli and his lovely wife, Fisha, are still on the way, stuck in a traffic jam. But without their support, this book would not have been launched. As you realize, Rafizi Ramli is the strategic director of Parti Keadilan Rakyat and also the founder of National Oversight and Whistleblowers, which is for all, and Rafizi is for all of us, the man of the hour. I'd like to thank my old friend from London days, Mr. Robert Lazar, managing partner of Shankar de Lamont. We met in London in 1979 when skirts were long and pints, when skirts were short and pints were long. And the only Lampard we knew was the father of the guy who became famous, you know. So, and next, Mr. Bernard Koo, blogger extraordinaire, who has come here beyond the call of duty because he's just recovering from some minor ailment, as you can see. Bernard is responsible more than one way for the publication of this book because of his introduction to Gerakbudaya, the publishers. And it was through him that I met Rafizi and his wife Fisha sometime last year at the gates of the Jalan Duta courts when we were waiting for the deliverance of a very famous verdict which you all are aware of. Mr. Chong Tonsin, Managing Director of Gerakbudaya, the publishers, is a very low-profile man, but he's a bit what we call, let's say, is a bit subtle because this man was deprived of his freedom and his youth when he was put in Kamunting under ISA arrest many years ago. And from thereafter, Gerakbudaya nowadays is a place where I find that a lot of books are published where the mainstream publishers and bookstores will not handle your material. My wife Cheryl, whose constant support can never be understated. My daughter Rekha, who inspired the heroine for the book. My son Prasad, I'm told, in the immortal words of RPK and famous statutory declarations, he said, I'm reliably told that he has some talent for writing. So, and my niece Sharmila, who's been volunteered to be my bouncing board ever since I started writing in 2006, and who introduced me to the world of blogging. My VI buddies, who've got a table of their own. Yep, they know their priorities. Hold the book, just let the beers flow. Members of the MSM, press, online news portals, especially Malaysia Kini, which carried a review of my book today. Family, bloggers, friends, Kuala Lumpurians and countrymen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to attend the launch of this book, which I hope you will all enjoy reading. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading a couple of chapters from the book. And as I go along, I will try and explain my thoughts and ideas behind what I wrote. But keep in mind that principally the book is about corruption when it goes totally out of control. And basically the book asks two fundamental questions. What is the responsibility of individuals when you perceive that your government has become the mafia? And two, if we cannot solve the problems of a country by democratic means, what is the avenue available to us? Okay, so I'm going to read from the first chapter of Tiger Isle, Government of Thieves. And the first chapter is called Cremation, and immediately you know it's about death. It began with a death and ended with another. In between, many more, millions perished, yet more lived than died. as Maha Adiguru Nada had once remarked, what is death but a quick shower, change of clothes, a new venue and a fresh start? Now, I started writing this book in July 2010 and completed it somewhere in December of the same year. 6 months is pretty fast for a book, but not really when you consider my age. You know, I'm in the OAP class. And if you're a young writer in the age of 25, 30, wrote a book in 6 months, you can say it's a great achievement, but not in my case when these ideas have been floating around my head for 20 years. And it took a lot of soul-searching and thinking to overcome, I suppose, a certain amount of fear to write a book. And I think nothing is done before its time. And the reason I think this book came out in this year is simply because, you know, the laws have been relaxed, censorship laws have been made easier and so on. So that was in writing the book. And besides which, you look at it and see, everybody is aware, you know, J.K. Rowling found 7 years before she found a person who would publish a book. Vikram Seth took 10 years to write his novel, you know, and of course we are looking at the great writers who when they write a great book, you know, they win the Booker Prize or something, and move on with that. Okay. Rekha's body was cremated at the ancient city cemetery in open air in accordance with Hindu rites, late evening on Tuesday, September 4th, 2012, which is quite recent. The ceremony and prayers were performed and overseen by Hindu priests from the Piliyar temple at Indian settlement near the golf course. Rekha had not been a Nobel Prize winner, All England badminton singles champions, or world squash, or bowling #1. She had not pocketed $1 million as Pulipur National Television Station for Idol or a reality show winner. She was neither a corporate Alibaba fraudpreneur billionaire, nor even a titled Sri, with which even mere railway gatekeepers, dentists, and gangland bosses were knighted nowadays. Her corpse had not been found floating headless in the river behind the police station headquarters after several days of police interrogation. Neither had it been discovered brutally battered and bruised in a holding cell after being investigated by police for alleged involvement in so-called international auto theft ring, while later a death certificate mysteriously pronounced the cause of death as pulmonary edema. And amidst public uproar, a rogue cop was charged with causing grievous hurt not amounting to homicide. Nor had it been gathered in bits and pieces in black polyurethane plastic bin bags due to spectacularly being blown up in a secluded forest while she was still half alive with dynamite strapped to her chest, for which the courts decided it was not necessary to determine the killer's motive. Her broken body had not appeared frozen in rigor mortis mysteriously on the roof of a high-rise complex where she had gone to voluntarily assist in a piddly $200 alleged corruption case. And anti-corruption officers later swore her death was due to sudden voluntary suicide, in which they had no hand. Yet thousands arrived at her home and at the cemetery to catch a glimpse of Rekha before she was gone forever. First to arrive were 7 of her best friends from her school days. Bloggers Zorro Unmasked, I wonder who that is, and Desiderata from ASEAN countries like Malaysia hastened their way to the cemetery. Even-handed commentators like Purple Haze rushed before the feral thunderstorm struck. Shakila, Amanda, Rama, Indran, Jalil, Hamid, Kongwon, Patel, Davis, Fuji, Jacob, Jaibalan, Tanchai, Murzali, Raymond De Silva. I see some hubbub there at the table, some familiar names here. Jaspal Ketchong and Michael Nettleton for absent. And Sing T from London and Sydney were too missing for understandable reasons. The old London gang of Sitsa, Prey Morgan, Chandru, Wilfred, Steve, Subra, and Robert drove up in two battered Beetles after drowning a few lunchtime once for the road at the Hilton Bar. Rekha would have approved of that. The Doctors' Brigade of Padma, Mahindran, Mohan, Sarmukh, Sivandan, Krish K, Yongfong and Cha forced their way through the mid-afternoon gridlock. Women are not allowed at Hindu burial sites, but wild horses could not have stopped them. Many wondered why Rekha's husband Roshan and her children, Lakshmi and Karthik, were not there. Her father explained that regretfully a terrorist bomb alert had shut down Melbourne airport and they were struck in the departure lounge. The cremation could not wait. Rekha passed away early morning at 6 o'clock while peacefully asleep in her bed at home. Just like that. No heart attack, sudden stroke, or a long bout with cancer. It had been a good half century, a good innings indeed. She was just another Tiger Isle citizen who died, albeit before time. It was just another case of an ordinary soul returning to her creator, so testified the death certificate. Dated Tuesday, September 4th, 2012. It was just another ordinary death. Or was it? So I created this island called Tiger Isle, which is supposedly located as the crow flies and a bit north in the Indian Ocean between Aceh in Sumatra and Malacca on the other side. So it's smack bang in Southeast Asia. And so it's got the connections with all the regional things. And the reason I came up with the name Tiger Isle is the tiger is the one animal that connects with all these countries in Southeast Asia more than any other. Singapore, as you know, was wrongly named. It should have been called Pulipo because lions never existed there. And when I was beginning to write this book, I was conscious also that the first line was important. I mean, you have come across, I'm sure, many books where the first line is supposed to draw the reader into the book. For example, there's this famous book which starts with "Call me Ishmael," which is Moby Dick, the opening line of Moby Dick, written by Herman Melville, which is about a white America trying to get to grips with the burgeoning black population as well as the colored immigrants. Another famous opening line for a book would be, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." This is Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, which again is set in a period of turmoil at the onset of the French Revolution in the 18th century, where countries trying to make a transition from absolute monarchy and divine kings to a government elected and run by the people. And in these transition times, you find that millions die. People, and the big word there is guillotine. People were executed by the hundreds and thousands by the guillotine. And the third book, perhaps, that comes to mind, that it was a cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13, which is George Orwell's 1984, which was written sometime in 1954. And in that book, Orwell warns Britain, as well as the world, the dangers of good men keeping silent. I mean, we are all aware of the cliched saying, all that is necessary for evil to flourish is for a few good men, for the good men to keep quiet. And in his book 1984, he talks about how communism will eventually lead to a cult of personality, which will lead to rule by a few, where the people are exploited to such an extent that there is no freedom whatsoever. They have these huge television sets in their rooms which spies upon the whole population, and they keep the population always off balance by... excuse me for just 1 minute. I welcome our special guest today, Rafizi Ramli. Over here. Come, have a seat. So eventually in the book 1984, which I refer to in my novel as well, towards the end of the book in a closing speech, Orwell talks about Big Brother who controls everything, even what you think. And you're not even allowed to think freely because they have machines which can record the expression on your face, and based on psychological profiles, they can charge you with thinking wrongly, right? So I was conscious that, the opening lines had to have some impact on the reader. And at the same time, if you notice, when I walked up to the rostrum, they played the music of the Godfather theme. It's one of the great movies of the 20th century, right? In which a group of men, and somehow, all the problems in this world seem to be associated with men and their egos. You rarely find, women forming the mafia or causing revolutions and stuff like that. Well, we're pointing a finger at somebody who's a great revolutionary here. Okay, so the mafia is about a group of men who find it inconvenient that the government tells them you cannot engage in thievery, in looting, prostitution, kidnapping, murder, mayhem, bribing senators, presidents and prime ministers. So they form their own group, which with their own laws. So you come up with Cosa Nostra, all these very evocative names from Sicily, and they talk about omerta, the vow of silence, which you cannot talk about us at all, our existence, right? And so when you write the first lines of the book, imagine if I'd written something like it began with life, and there was happiness, and it ended with life, As some famous writer once, I think it was Tolstoy, who said, give me happiness, and we'll just live with it, but give me death and misery, and there's material for 10 novels, So you can imagine if I'd written if there's life, and it began with life and ended with life, Vito Corleone said, hey, Fanucci, what's this guy here, Shankar, writing, Began with life and ended with life. Is he trying to put us out of business or what, Make him an offer he can't refuse, And I wish, somebody would make me an offer, a suitcase with $20 million or $40 million, which you can carry from Hong Kong, and purely for political donation, which I can if I want use for personal use, So something like that. But they don't make such offers to ordinary people. The good and the good die young and penniless. So, but imagine with this opening here, it began with death and ended with another. In between, many more millions perish. You can imagine now, right? Sonny Corleone, the son of Vito, hey, Pops! Yes, Shankar, began with a death. Millions died. Our kind of guy, So you don't end up sleeping with a fish. So the first chapter tells you somebody called Rekha, who's 50 years old, died. She didn't die because of being blown up by C4 explosives. She didn't die because she fell off the 15th floor of a high-rise building. She didn't die of a heart attack. She didn't die of cancer. She didn't die of anything. But the death certificate says she died peacefully, just like that. So right at the end of the chapter, the question posed is are you reading what is the truth, or is there more to this than death of an unknown person? The second point is there are contradictions here, because we say Rekha is nobody, but yet we are told that thousands came for her funeral. Even Bernard Koo attended it, and so you begin to wonder why. Why would, if an anonymous non-entity died, why would thousands want to come for the funeral and pay their last respects? So this is one aspect of Rekha. The other thing is, you'll notice from the names of peoples, there are Indians, there are Chinese, there are Malays, there are Christians, there are Buddhists. So it gives you a fairly fair introduction that this is a country where there's mixed population, mixed culture, mixed religion. It's not, far removed from things that Malaysians are familiar with. Okay, so I will go into the next chapter called 2211, which is 200 years from now. And the conversation is taking place between Janaki and her lover, Parikshit. And she says, and Parikshit says, like Plato's Atlantis, and Janaki, by the way, is probably the last of the Tiger Islanders to be alive. So she says, like Plato's Atlantis in 10,000 BC, are you sure? Parikshit quietly asks. Yeah, I'm sure, she shot back Janaki, sounding a little exasperated and annoyed. What? Like Chingachgook and Uncas? Yeah. And you have what proof? I Wikipedia'd it, there's nothing there. And she says, you won't find it on Wikipedia or anywhere, even if you Googled or Yahoo'd it forever. Says what? Area 51, Roswell, Hangar 18 and 54 all over again. And Janaki says, there was no mystery in Roswell, and you damn well know it. There weren't any UFOs or spindly-shaped aliens from Mars with green blood and pigeon-toed feet. Washington and the White House covered up a disastrous crash where they lost several experimental Air Force planes and their pilots. Of course, they didn't want Congress and the taxpayer to find out and have their research funding cut. So they let the alien stories be milked to glory. And before you start on it, Nazca lines, the pyramids, and the White House were all man-made. Yes, yes, we are alone in the universe. That's the way it's always meant to be. And you know all this because which god avatared before you, and that you in on it? Parikshit laughed. Janaki moaned and said, stop it. Don't mock things you're clueless about. But Parikshit would not stop. He said, this is just too bizarre. There are no records of it anywhere, no Remembrance Day, no archives, discovery, documentary, movies, books, YouTube, videos. All gone, poof. Like some Statue of Liberty disappeared. And Janaki says, says who? I know. I weep, and it's more like New York vanished. Janaki spoke in hushed tones. He said, come on, Jan, you know exactly what happened 200 years ago? Yeah, what the hell would you know, she said. Who, the Americans? The commie rats, Iran, North Korea, the Taliban, and the Muslim diaspora would have exposed them. And if it were the Ruskies or the Chinese, Uncle Sam would have gone to town. You think India, Britain, France would have let it pass? You're out of your mind. She says it was all of them together. For the first time in human history, every single nation on the face of earth came together and decided collectively what the best course of action was. So they blanked it all out. It never made it into any history book or official archives. The greatest cover-up of all times, fumed Janaki. And Parikshit says, there was a huge island in Southeast Asia, you say just plopped into the ocean without a trace. And no one's heard of it since? And what about the 30 million people of Tiger Isle? Parikshit inquired as he gaped at her in disbelief. Dead. All dead, she whispered, as the tears rolled down her cheeks. Okay, so the second chapter tells you something fantastic, that an island of 30 million people just disappeared, you know. And Janaki, who is the last survivor, possibly the last surviving member of Tiger Island, is unable to explain it further than to say it happened. But her lover says, what? I checked Wikipedia, Google, Yahoo. I checked even Utusan and Cosmos archives. This is not there. It can't be true. Well, she says it happened. And so this chapter tries to link the first two chapters. You know, something happened. Somebody died for reasons unknown yet. And it's tied up with the disappearance of an island of 30 million people. Now, if you look at it, this is something that cannot be explained at this juncture of the book, other than to compare it with other phenomena like Roswell and things. I mean, if you look at World War II, maybe 20 million people died in the war. World War I. World War II, maybe 100 million if you combine deaths of the Allies and the Axis. You know. But for 30 million people to disappear in the blink of an eye in a single incident and claim that, you know, that it was a conspiracy which the whole world kept quiet about, and that somehow it goes back to the Tiger Islander who died in the very first chapter, or it says she died. It may not be the case. So there's a link here of a kind of phenomena that involves normal politics, normal country, abnormal phenomena, and so on. So the rest of Tiger Isle is really an exposition on corruption and what happens and what can happen, what we can do, and the courage of individuals to stand up when faced with this kind of huge problems. Okay, now I'm going to read to you, go to the end of the book, so as to keep my speech short and sweet. The last chapter is the epilogue, which is titled The Epilogue. Great. Okay, it was Monday, September 3rd, 2012. The special cleaners arrived at 11:30 p.m. in a jet black funeral limousine. Never one to leave their chance, their leader, Yama, had police squad cars seal off the entrance to Sherwood Villa for a couple of hours. They carefully lifted the casket over the entrance steps, trooped in and placed it on the carpet in the center of the living room. They lifted the cover of the casket as two men held the trembling and tearful Krishnasamy by his arms and drew him forward for a view. Listen, old man, Yama said, we have arranged for the priest who will arrive here at 10 a.m. sharp tomorrow. We have checked. It's a very propitious hour to begin the prayers and start receiving mourners. Don't move the casket in any way or touch the body. The priest will remain with you until the casket is transported to the cemetery in the evening. All arrangements have been taken care of, so don't interfere with anything. You have been briefed what to say and to anyone who asks questions. She died tomorrow morning in her sleep. Got it? Yama growled as he put his fingers vertically over his lips to indicate secrecy. They escorted Krishnasamy back to the sofa where he collapsed in uncontrollable grief. Here's something for you, whispered Yama, as for once the mask slipped and some human emotion seeped out. For a trained killer who had seen just about every kind of death and its horror, even he had been shaken to the core at the sight and condition of the three bodies found in the IR. IR here is the interrogation room. It was a check for $1 million. After they left, Krishnasamy went berserk and furiously tore the check into 1 million pieces and flung them out the window. Did Bhairav and Kapalin think he would succumb to their, can you help me? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Got it? Sick, unprincipled, and immoral philosophy. For in the end, Tiger Isle was undone not by black holes, undersea quakes, tsunamis, or divine displeasure. It sunk from the unbearable heaviness of being inhuman, alien, putrid, stinking, filthy, and rotting scum. It collapsed under the weight of endemic, entrenched, unrootable, vile, and evil corruption, cronyism, religious bigotry, and racism. Tiger Isle paid the ultimate price that awaited every nation and people on earth, whose leaders yet managed to forget their humanity, which is supposedly fused into the very fabric of their flesh and soul. 4 years later, Rekha's precocious son, Karthik, became the youngest billionaire ever at age 18. He developed the most innovative and popular of role-playing computer games devised, which one could download from the web for $4.99. It was about a civilization that suddenly emerges in 1200 CE and pits tigers, priests, demigods, and gods against Americans, Russians, Chinese, Indians, Europeans, and other Asians battling for the keys to unlock the secrets of the universe. It was called Aeropilab, which is the anagram of Pulipo. The key to victory in Aeropilab lay in unraveling the code which first had to be pieced together from those immortal lines uttered so often by Rekha. We are all of one race, the human race. Now, when I started blogging in 2006, I remember calling my niece, Sharmila, and saying, hey, how do you blog, I said, you young people know everything about blogging, and I had zero knowledge of it. And she said, oh, it's quite easy, just, go to Blogger and switch it on and follow the instructions and you're home, And so 6 months later is when I managed to get to the basics of blogging. And when I came up with my first post, I was conscious that I had put a tagline for the blog. And somehow this phrase did come into my mind, which is what I wanted to, which I used to end my book, which is we are all of one race, the human race. And I think the biggest problem in our society today is that we are too divided by these ideas of race planted in us. Now, a couple of points about the last chapter. The events supposed to have occurred, Rekha is supposed to have died on the 3rd of September. Now, this is just something I wanted to have fun with, because there was a great pop group called The Temptations in the 60s and 70s, and they came up with the song called Papa Was a Rolling Stone. And there's a song that goes, it was the 3rd of September, the day I'll always remember. So when I wrote this book, I said, I must somewhere along this line, I must use this 3rd of September, because it was the day you'll always remember. And of course, in the book, we are told that although she died 3rd of September, the Yama in Hindus is the god of death. So he's an assassin working for the government. And he says, remember, she died tomorrow. You see, so the birth certificate says she died September 4th, but the actual event took place on September the 3rd. And the entire end of the book is based on, again, I'm playing around, because the book involves certain phenomena which cannot be explained by science. And so I chose the date that the actual event took place on 21st December 2012, which is yet to come, right? But as you all know, according to the so-called Mayan calendar, the world is going to end on 21st December 2012. So I would suggest you all cash in your bank and shares and have a good time. Yeah. Okay, there's a book which actually set me off on writing Tiger Isle, but this book is based on a movie. Actually, I didn't read the book. It's called The Mad Woman of Shiloh, which was written, I suppose, in the 60s, and the movie came out in around the time. It is a similar kind of situation where suddenly they discover oil under Paris, and you find that everybody is busy trying to dig up Paris and destroy a way of life that the French have. Soon the generals are there, the oilmen are there, the sheikhs are there, and everybody is. So one of the solution that a countess, who is the heroine of the book, decides is that towards the end she gets all these generals and oilmen and people who will destroy civilization and takes them to her basement and say, come look at my wine collection, And she takes them right down to the basement. And when they're all there, she slowly moves out and she shuts the door and throws the keys away. And she says, this is a great solution to this kind of thing that will destroy the very fabric of society. So this question of Tiger Isle, as I said, is about corruption and about us taking a stand. Now I know you're all going to say, and I've been through it myself, right? There are times when I've sat well before I started writing in 2006 and think, should I, shouldn't I, who am I, I'm just an ordinary person just like everybody else here. Whatever fears you have, I have the same fears, I have a family, I have children, but if there comes a point where you can't sleep, where this thing, bugs you all the time, then you have to take a stance. The degree of the stance, that depends on your circumstances. Nobody says that everybody has to contribute equally to bring about any change, You do according to your circumstances. If you can marshal people to move out of their houses and come on this peaceful demonstration like Bursi, that's your forte, If you're a leader and you found the National Oversight and Blowers Organization, that's another peaceful way of going about trying to find. And if you can write, you write, If you can't write, you read. If you can't read, speak. Whatever it takes, whatever little effort you make, you'll find that it will push the barriers back little by little. I mean, when I was in London with Mr. Robert Lazar in the early sorry, in the late 70s and early 80s, we never thought that we would see the end of apartheid in our lifetime. You know, some of us would go and stand in the Trafalgar Square and sing with the Africans and so on. But in our hearts, we thought, you know, the battle is simply beyond us. You know, when you've got so many vested interests. But it happened. It happened. How long did it take communism to fall? 70 years. You know. So we are left with these thoughts that how we contribute doesn't, as I said, have to be equal. But if we keep quiet, it's not going to get better. And I think the single most thing by which we are divided today is the question of race. It's a very important point and very relevant today because 2 days ago our Prime Minister was in Cambodia signing the, what was it called, Taya? Anti-corruption law or something. Now, Malaysia is a signatory to the United Nations Charter, just like most countries. And I'm going to end this by reading to you a very important amendment that was made to the UN Charter in 2009. This charter reads, "The United Nations reaffirms that all peoples and individuals constitute one human family, rich in diversity, and that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and strongly rejects any doctrine of racial superiority along with theories which attempt to determine the existence of a so-called distinct human races." Now, I would say this is the second most important document ever written by man. I mean, it's a personal opinion, but I would think the first one would have been the American Declaration of Independence. If you read it, I think you won't fail to be inspired by the power of the poetry of the words. It says, whenever a group of men join together, decide to dissolve the bonds that once held them together, they have every right to do so. And they go on to say, we have a creator, and the creator has endowed human beings with inalienable rights. Now, inalienable right means the human beings don't have to tell you, it's given to you by God, and it's there for birth. And I dare and challenge anyone to say that, you know, a child that is born, whether that child is a Muslim or a Hindu, the child has no religion, it has no race, it has no color. It is what we see, but the child doesn't see that. You know. Children are not born with a yarmulke on the head or a Hindu thing or a Muslim cap or nothing. You know. So where does this question of race, how and why it came up and why we began dividing race into Caucasians and blacks and Australian, Australo, whatever, these classifications, these old classifications don't apply anymore, you know. Especially in a country like Malaysia where I would think, 60, 70%, maybe 80% of us all have mixed ancestry, you know. So the idea of a pure race is nonsense. And I'm vindicated by something that I thought of in 2006 for my blog. And the UN came up with this amendment to its charter to say that we do not agree with any attempt to determine the existence of so-called distinct human races. So I end this talk by reiterating what I knew I would end my book with when I first started writing it. I knew the end. The beginning took a little bit longer because I was thinking of the Godfather and whether he would approve or not. So I end this by saying that we are all of one race, the human race. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shankar, for sharing your thoughts. There is one chapter that he read that I feel that I should repeat and maybe share with all of you again. The line is in the first chapter, and I would like to read it. His first chapter ends with, "It was just another death." Or was it? I think many of us know that what is the answer, but what is most important is, will there be justice? So that is why you have to read the book. Yeah. All right. We will move to the next. Program, which is I would like to invite Mr. Shankar and also his wives, all the speakers, and also Mr. Chong to launch the book. Thank you. Okay. The speakers will be YB Rafizi Ramli, Mr. Robert Laza, and Mr. Bernard Koo.